Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another BRAP rant. Look, I had to do a rant about the fallout of the CMA blocking Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard King because it has been disappointing. The reaction by the Fanatical side of the Xbox community. And even more puzzling to me is the reaction by Brad Smith and Microsoft and Activision of the CMA's decision. I don't think they've done anything to help their cause. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. I'm sure Mooch is like, oh my God, BRAP is doing a rant right before Crossfire. Is he going to be on time? Mooch, if you're listening, I will be there at 7 o'clock. Well, actually, I'll be there a couple minutes prior to 7 o'clock, right after I wrap up this rant. And if you want to hear more discussion about the block by the CMA for Microsoft to acquire ABK, you definitely want to tune into Crossfire. I forget who Mooch is going to have on. I think he's going to have Mr. Badbit. Maybe Jay Barry, I think. Actually, you know what? Let me look at the list here. Let me take a look at the list. Who's Mooch having here? Oh, he's going to have Eric Jackson. He's got Falky. Falky's going to be on with us. And Jack Move Johnny, Mr. Badbit, and I think it looks like Nick, from lordsofgaming.net, is going to be joining Crossfire as well. Jay Barry will be there. So, okay, there we go. Yeah, so that goes live at 7 o'clock on Mooch's channel. It's Crossfire. Come check it out. I'll be there as well, talking more about the blockage, as I call it. I also want to welcome Game Logic. Game Logic, what's going on, man?
Hey, yo!
Happy Friday to you, good sir.
That it is. There wasn't a bad Friday. I was knocked out on the couch with the dog, as I almost am about 90% of the time before I come on the show. So I am, one, very glad that I woke up. Two, I'm double excited that you had me on for the rant, because now I've been trying to get back to COD Season 3 all week. But, I've also been going back into the office. So I come home, I'm exhausted, I've been under the weather, health hasn't been great, I knock out, I tend to wake up late, and then only get on COD like very late and only get in like 30 minutes to an hour at a time. So I'm glad that we're gonna do the rant, and then I'm gonna be able to go play some COD while you go do Crossfire.
There you go, man. Well, look, I was when you said that you fell asleep and almost didn't make the rant, I was gonna send you the Joe Biden gif.
The Sleepy Joe gif or the surprise gif?
The surprise one.
Well, I do my best, man. I do my best. Got a lot of juggling, as we all do.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm gonna do me a quick favor, everyone. Please retweet the link here. Let everyone know that we're live. Look, I got to be honest with you, man. The gaming community really needs to do better. Like. And you may be asking yourself, well, what do you mean, BRAP? What do you mean by the gaming community needs to do better? The CMA blocking this deal, Lena Khan's thoughts on this deal and her actions as FTC chair shouldn't lead you down a path where you're being a complete xenophobe and you're making racist comments. Like, when I compared the fanatical side of the Xbox community and made the analogy that they behaved like QAnon level conspiracy theorists, I got pushback. Oh, BRAP, that's a little bit too, that's not true. People rioted January 6th. But the behavior, as you're seeing the fallout by the more extremist, the fanatical side of the Xbox community, is similar to what we saw with the fallout from the 2020 election and MAGA supporters and QAnon supporters. this doubling down on conspiracy theories. The new one is, oh, well, the CMA met with the FTC. They colluded. They broke laws. They weren't supposed to talk about this deal because Bobby Kotick planted that seed in your mind, and you're too stupid to understand that he never confirmed or had no insight knowledge into what conversation was actually happening. What he's doing is trying to stir the pot.
And just for people who haven't been around, I'll just call them certain kinds of operations. When people collude, that typically happens at secret meetings that no one knows about. The meeting between the CMA, the EC, and the CMA was I mean, it said CMA twice, and the FTC was very public. It was well known. It was reported in the news. There was no secret meeting. Nobody met in a dark alley with Boebert's husband.
I don't know what meeting you're. The meeting I'm talking about is the meeting that happened like last week or something, or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, you're talking about that meeting. Okay, I just want to make sure you weren't, because there have been other meetings that have been. But go ahead. I'm sorry, man.
Yes.
So Boebert's husband was there, or he wasn't there. That's.
Yes, there are frequent, typical, regular meetings between the CMA, the EC, and the FTC. It's no secret. This was not some covert operation. This was not some psyop. Lena Khan is not running around in a ghillie suit in camouflage. It's all on the up and up. I think we can tamp that down.
Well, apparently she's an operative, according to Kid Smooth. And yes, I'm going to mention his name today because, for crying out loud, could you not be any more? I don't even know how to say this, man. Like,
I mean, I think you did say it. I mean, xenophobic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Could you be any more xenophobic? I mean, over video games. And Kid Smooth, you're the example. You're just one of the many examples of when I call out that fanatical side of the Xbox community that behaves like crazy MAGA QAnon supporters. You're the example. You questioning Lena Khan. Oh, I bet she's not American. Why? Because her name is Lena Khan and she has dark complexion and she's not white. Her name's not Christine Smith. She must not be American. She must be an operative. I'm telling you. Those people are invading our country.
Okay, you got to leave Christine alone, though. She all right. That's my homegirl.
Again, it is this behavior that I'm talking about, and I don't typically mention people's names on the show, but I'm going to mention his name because not only did he go full on like crazy. I'm trying to be nice here, although I shouldn't be. Not only did he just double down on his xenophobia, but he doubled down on what he said and basically said, yeah, if you don't like it, block me. Okay, I'll block you. But prior to blocking you, I'm going to call you out for being an idiot. And I'm going to call you out for saying some dumb, racist shit. Like you kids, you should not be allowed to vote. You don't have the IQ, the intelligence to be able to vote. The fact that you can vote is fucking scary to me. Like, I got to be honest with you, Hamp. Like, I told you, I've tried to be patient. You know what? I've tried to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm not doing it anymore. Because this behavior is ridiculous. All over video games. Like, gaming community, let's, like, seriously, do better. Do better. Don't stop giving people a pass because they align with whatever console brand that you enjoy. Don't do that. Don't compromise yourself like that. Don't compromise your integrity. Don't compromise your values over an electronics device. Furthermore, The fallout from the deal being blocked is listening to guys like Mr. Boomstick, and I'm going to mention his name, saying that Lena Khan is not taking into account the law, insinuating that she's acting outside the law. Well, let's think about this, Mr. Boomstick. You're a police officer, or used to be. Who appointed Lena Khan? I mean, who appointed her, Game Logic? Logic, you there? Did we lose Logic?
Yes, no, I'm here.
Oh.
To be quite honest, I hesitate to answer because I constantly call people out for not knowing how things work in this country, and mainly what I'm calling them out for is commenting on things when they don't know how they work in this country. I believe she is appointed by the president and
yes,
and confirmed by Congress. But I will.
Yes, no, she's appointed by the president of the United States,
and confirmed.
And if you're making the accusation that Lena Khan is operating outside the boundaries of the law and that she's breaking law, then you're also insinuating that Joe Biden is compliant. The president of the United States, POTUS himself, the entire executive branch of the government, you're saying that they're colluding with a lawbreaker. Because guess what the FTC chair does? She meets with the president of the United States. For crying out loud, people, if you're going to make accusations, at least understand and know what the fuck you're talking about. Understand how the system works.
And I do want to add that important. I do want to add that important note. Nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. So just for the narrative that's running around about senators and congressmen being upset with her and her actions and calling her out, right? That's the same. Just remember, when we talk about politics, those are the same senators, right, that confirmed her into the position in the first place.
Yes, and they vetted her. They had access to her paper on big tech. She wrote a paper about Amazon. Joe Biden taps her on the shoulder. Joe Biden wants to take on big business. And who does he tap on the shoulder? Lena Khan.
And not only Lena Khan, but I believe his name Jonathan Cantor as well, the assistant. What's the title now that I'm forgetting?
He's head of the Department of Justice.
No, not head, but he's assistant for the segment of the Department of Justice that's responsible for antitrust.
Oh, yeah, antitrust. Yeah, their antitrust group, the DOJ. Yeah. Which a lot of people leave out, by the way. They solely focus on Lena Khan and the FTC, and they forget that the FTC with the DOJ, they work together to block these deals.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Assistant Attorney General, specifically in charge of for the antitrust division. So, and the narrative that we're talking about is the narrative that everything that's going on is solely Lena Khan.
I need to address something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right? Seriously, dude, just leave, man. Just leave. You talk about not being extreme and talk about taking people's voting rights away. No, I'm talking about taking one person's voting right away based on their IQ level. And that's that extreme. And that's that extreme as making xenophobic comments about an FTC chair over video games. So you can kick rocks. Everything I'm not, it's not that I'm emotionally invested in this. It's that I'm bringing a different perspective, a more level-headed, rational perspective, and actually giving people some insight into how things actually work so that maybe when you listen to these so-called podcasters who are making these outlandish claims, that maybe you'll be like, wait a minute, that's not how that works. As opposed to just digesting all that different disinformation. Because that's a problem. Go ahead, Game Logic.
I just want to address one question in the chat, and I think Antonio Ailman preempted this. But let us know, he wanted to ask it. So if Microsoft made COD exclusive on cloud gaming, does that mean that to play COD on PlayStation, Sony had to allow an app or something similar on the PlayStation and receive $0 for in-app purchases? So I think Antonio, just the way you've written it, there may be a couple questions muddled. So I'm gonna try and go at it, and you let me know if I'm answering the right question. So I think part of the confusion that came up today was that one of the things that surfaced that was written into the deals that Microsoft has made with the cloud gaming providers, one of the clauses of that deal was that they would collect 100% of the revenue from any microtransactions, in-app purchases, et cetera. But I want to try to make a couple distinctions. So number one, there's a few people on Twitter. I don't think it's deliberate, but they're kind of going around referring to like things like Boosteroid and Ubuntu as cloud service providers. Just want to clarify that that's not technically correct. Usually we use the term cloud service provider or CSP in reference to infrastructure providers. So those are your Microsoft, your Amazon, your Google, your Tencent, et cetera. That's Azure, AWS, GCP. And that's the reference to CSP. A cloud service provider is somebody who provides, in general, kind of generic infrastructure level services for other people to put platforms and software solutions on for delivery to either B2B, business customers or end users. So there's CSPs, and then there's what now we're calling CGPs, or a cloud gaming provider. So the clause was if I license COD to Boosteroid, and Boosteroid then allows people to subscribe to its service, the way the clause read is if an end user is playing COD through the cloud, through Boosteroid service, and buys COD points, or buys a bundle, then all of that money would be kept by Microsoft. I think the important distinction, and I actually didn't pick up on this right away. Actually, somebody I was arguing with pointed it out, and they are correct. The relationship between a cloud service provider and somebody putting their SaaS solution on their work on the infrastructure as a workload,
software as a service.
Yep, and the same in reverse. It's not the same thing as the relationship between a platform owner, a digital marketplace, a storefront, in those relationships where they normally take a 30% cut. If I go to Amazon, if I go to AWS, and I say I'm going to open up a store, I'm going to open up Etsy, and I'm going to run Etsy on AWS. Amazon doesn't take a 30% cut of anything that I sell through Etsy. Amazon charges me normally at a consumption-based rate for various services. They charge me for compute, for memory, for storage. If I'm doing something sophisticated, then then Google charges me for natural language processing or any AI ML that I consume, or all these different services, and I pay that bill on a monthly basis. And it doesn't matter to them whether I sell 10,000 digital widgets or 1,000 digital widgets. They just charge me based on now if those purchases drive more compute for some reason, then I get charged more, but it's not directly associated with the actual sale. Versus when I sell something in a digital marketplace or an app store, or I say I'm going to put my app, in the iOS App Store, or I'm going to put my app in the Google Play Store, then those arrangements have those clauses where it's normally a 30% thing. So the deal with Sony would not have been written. So Sony's COD on Sony is putting COD in their digital marketplace in their storefront. The cloud arrangement is that cloud arrangement that I talked about. So there would be the 30% cut theoretically, or whatever, if they were still going to do the discounted revenue share that they do with Activision, that would have been in place on Sony. Putting it in PlayStation Plus is not necessarily making it available via cloud, although Sony runs a subordinate cloud service. I don't know what hooks there may have been in that service, but it would have been different, most likely, than the arrangement that they're making with people like Boosteroid. The arrangement with Ubuntu would have been completely different again, because Ubuntu isn't even a customer-facing cloud gaming provider or cloud game streaming service. Ubuntu obviously is a cloud enablement company that helps people like Nintendo cloud enable games for delivery to end users on the platform.
No, thank you for that that breakdown there, because you're right that people were kind of, I think, conflating the two things there. But let me grab this super chat here from Craig the Tech Guy. Says the $2 super chat says, "I'm here to block the deal." Thank you, Craig the Tech Guy. I also want to clarify something here, because there were some comments from Wednesday's show where people were leaving commentary saying that, oh, well, you guys were never for the deal. You wanted it blocked. We've actually never said that we wanted the deal blocked. I've never said that. Game Logic's never said that. In fact, B Money's never said it. Slow-Mo's never said it. Forte's never said it. None of us has said that we want this deal blocked.
Yeah, in fact, before Brad Smith, Bobby Kotick, and Lulu Che-Messervy threw their very public temper tantrum over the last 48 hours, I'd actually said that I think I said there was a 70% chance that the deal would go through, but there would have to be concessions made, and it would not be structured as Microsoft had originally pitched it. So again, there's a stark difference between being for or against something. Being for something means you're like one of these Xbox people in that camp that's running around saying that they're going to make a victory lap when the deal gets approved. They have an emotional need for the deal to be approved so that there's a win in the Xbox column. Being against the deal is like a lot of the PlayStation people who are running around, who are on that side of the camp, that are happy that the deal got blocked. They actually got a dopamine hit from the CMA blocking the deal. I didn't get that. I got my dopamine hit because I had said that there were concerns about this deal. I made very lengthy discussions about business dynamics, how things work, what these regulatory agencies look at, and I had lots of people running into my threads, yelling and screaming at me, frothing at the mouth, slobbering all over themselves, telling me to shut up, asking me, well, when the deal gets approved, will you shut up and admit you were wrong? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not saying these are reasons to block the deal. I'm saying that these are challenges that Microsoft needs to surmount. And I'm also saying that I don't know that Microsoft has satisfied all those questions, that Microsoft has met all those challenges successfully. I don't know that running around giving out 10-year deals like PEZ was the thing to do. Obviously, it was not. I said that when they were asked to provide the documentation on the deal and they didn't provide that, I said there's a reason they're not providing it, because there are things in there that may not give them the best look. And I had people saying, do you think Microsoft would be stupid enough to put something in a deal that, they would have to eventually show to a commission? I'm like, well, whatever they put in the deal, they're not showing the commissions at the first time that they ask. And now, as we see from the documentation finally being provided, at least to the CMA, there are at least some things in there that are causing the CMA to give it the side eye. So none of us, like BRAP said, none of us have ever been against the deal. If the deal goes through, great. I get COD through Game Pass, and that's $70 less that I have to pay to play it on multiple platforms, because I buy COD more than once, probably, at least the years when it's good. I didn't buy it when it was Vanguard, So it's no skin off my nose if the deal goes through. If the deal doesn't go through, I shrug my shoulders and I continue to pay my $70 like I do to play the game every year anyway. So I think we need to recognize the people who are emotionally wrapped up in it versus the people who are trying to logically and rationally explain it. And when we do get pissed off, it's because we get pissed off because people are trying to shout us down, restrict the flow of information, create groupthink, and base their accusations on things about us that just aren't true, like that we're PlayStation biased or some of the other foolishness that runs around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if there's been any concern that I've voiced over this deal, it's what mass consolidation could mean to the video game industry, and how mass consolidation can have negative impacts on consumers, because we have examples of other industries where mass consolidation has not been for consumers. And I've specifically have mentioned and given examples of those industries where that have consolidated that haven't necessarily been good for consumers. See, that's the difference. When you come listen to this show, we're not like talking out of our asses and just pulling shit out of air and being like, well, Lena Khan's breaking the law. And really? So the whole Biden administration is complicit with law breaking now? Is that it? Because you're not thinking about what you're saying here? We're not out here making accusations that the CMA doesn't know what they're doing because you don't agree with their ruling. We're not out here saying the CMA is acting illegally. What we are doing is having conversation about the CMA's decision. We're asking questions. How do they arrive to the decision that they did? Why are these regulatory agencies? Why do they have a target on big tech right now? We talked about this earlier today, Game Logic, and I said to you, a lot of the conversation, a lot of the things that we've been hearing about is big tech getting too big. Maybe think about what happened in 2020, the election of 2020, or not 2020, the 2016 election. And you think about these tech companies having this power, this tremendous influence in terms of information. And we know what happened. We know that our election was meddled by foreign adversaries, Russia and China in particular. We know this. Facebook confirmed this. Facebook Meta, whatever they're called now, confirmed this. And to me, when that happened, Game Logic, it was kind of like that aha moment by our government here, and probably governments overseas, that, wait a minute, like have these big tech companies grown too big And should we be concerned about the amount of influence and power they wield? To me, that's not an unfair question to ask.
No,
yeah, go ahead, man.
And for people who, I mean, we often comment on how we worry sometimes that the overemphasis and the hyper concentration on the gaming industry sometimes leaves people struck a little bit in terms of just not opening the aperture and kind of paying attention to what's going on in the world around them. So like BRAP said, right, that moment in recent history where there was kind of a realization of the types of, it's funny, we talked about colluding, we talked about, clandestine covert operations, and, it was an eye-opening moment about, things that could be done. And it's not entirely different from the things that we see where we see, national actors, tapping on the door of industrial infrastructure in this country to see, what they can access and what they can't. And so one of the things I think to understand is that when we go back in commerce history and trade history a little bit before this time period, the big companies that were at the top of the Dow Jones Industrial Index were and the largest in market cap were like your Exxons, your gas companies, your financial institutions. And then a little bit lower down, you had, maybe big entertainment conglomerates. In each of those cases, none of those business types have the degree of presence and the degree of invasiveness that they do now in people's lives. Your relationship with Exxon was, once every few days when you went to the gas station and exchanged money in a very direct barter system, right, to gain fuel for your vehicle, and then you drove away and you were done, and you didn't think about Exxon until you had to go get gas next time. Financial institutions, yes, while they were trading on and starting the information market in their day, there was still a distance, right, between you and the financial institution. And then, television networks, large entertainment conglomerates were the closest thing maybe to the concerns that we have about the big five tech now. But again, you were air gapped to a lot of those, right? They weren't in your lives every minute of every day. And that went on kind of a sliding scale, I think way more so than there is now. With these digital companies now, they have influence over so many people's lives. And you have to combine the rise of those technical companies with the advent of digital devices and the smartphone, right? You go back before 2007, before the iPhone, a mobile phone, there are billions of mobile phone handsets now all over the planet, typically constantly held by people. I mean, and I hate to say it, but my smartphone is within arm's reach, every minute of every day from the time that I wake up until I go to bed. And that's the truth for billions of other people on the planet. And so they have access to an unprecedented amount of information on any individual. They have access to location tracking at an unprecedented level. They are able to convey messages. Their moderation systems and structures and governance is a key part of how we receive and absorb information. I like to ignore it or marginalize it, but the notion that there are people who, it's really scary, who actually get their news from social media, Facebook, Twitter. Quite frankly, no offense to anybody in the chat, but I mean, even as I've joined this show, it's been starkly amazing to me that the way that a lot of people receive their gaming news is by watching this circle of YouTubers and podcasters. That was just very foreign to me, even as I was doing my own podcast. I mean, I've always gotten my news from, websites, magazines, and always consumed it that way. And then sometimes I would hear these podcasts. So again, and where YouTube and these podcasts are a form of social media. So the fact of the matter is that the world has recognized that, the regulatory agencies have recognized that, the governments of the world have recognized that. Combine that on top of an unprecedented degree of financial strength wielded by these companies as well, and you start to see the picture. Also understand that culturally, the generations of people who are coming into leadership, BRAP and I's generation is There are some people who are at that leadership level in these various countries, and if they're not at that leadership level now, they're a step away, right? From one more person retires, and we're going to see people of our generation entering those roles. And a lot of our perspective on the world, as we interpret it through past fiction that we've been exposed to, is aliens, right? And you talk about the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. How many jokes have been made about which of these big five tech companies is going to be the one that builds Skynet, right? Is going to be Google or Meta? So those are running jokes, but they also color the lenses through which those decision makers are viewing the world. And so there is a concern right now of, first of all, how did we get here? How did we get to a point where there is such financial strength and such market strength consolidated in these big five? How in the world has Amazon changed the very face of how the retail market operates around the world? Not solely in this country, but in most of the first world developed nations around the world. There are retail franchises that I grew up with that do not exist now due to Amazon. And so that is a thing that's being taken into consideration. And that is, again, like I said, coloring the lenses of what's going on. And there is a view to, at least for a point in time, pump the brakes, restrain and hold these big five tech companies where they are, and take consideration for how we've allowed the markets to operate, how we've allowed commerce to be regulated, at least at this point, before they get any bigger. There's a concerted effort to not allow this to continue. And when you look at cloud gaming, you look at a lot of the comments that are being made, how can they have this attitude towards a cloud gaming market that isn't present yet? Well, the problem is, if you don't intervene now, there will not be a cloud market, a cloud game streaming market. Because one of the things I've said is all these startups, they're dependent upon venture capital. And if you come to a venture capitalist and you say, hey, here's my pitch, I want to start a cloud game streaming service, the question you're going to get, the question I would ask is, I would say, okay, that's a great idea. Tell me what your plan is to surmount the challenge of the $1 trillion company that already has a mature technical solution. And you should take that and say that 3 times, because that's a key component to get to the fight. Is, remember, most companies coming into this are going to be figuring out their technical solution and figuring out the business model, right, that supports it. And when the technical solutioning changes, that often causes ripple effects where the business model needs to be tweaked again to realign to it. So it's the multi-trillion-dollar company with a vast amount of resources, with a mature technical solution, a business model that already supports it. And here's another key thing. All of the business relationships and technical relationships that are required to collaborate and coordinate to make that go. They know all the ISPs. They own all their own CDN peering network connections that are needed to take the long haul transport of information and cut it over to normal networks for the ISPs to deliver. They have financial relationships in place. They know all the right people to talk to. They have people in buildings who have to go get permits and other business licenses.
Can I interrupt real quick, man? Like, this is the analysis. This is the kind of analysis that we do on the show. And what's frustrating is that the other shows are full blown on emotional about this, saying the CMA is wrong. They're not really articulating or thinking about how the CMA arrived to the decision they did. And what I appreciate about your analysis is you're not on here saying the CMA was right or wrong. You're just saying these are the things that factor into the decision. These are the things that they are looking at. When people talk about cloud being a nascent market, what the CMA has said is, look, unlike other instances where we haven't stepped in, and this is kind of what, if you've kind of been keeping up with what Lena Khan's been talking about, and the concern about big tech being too big and wielding a tremendous amount of influence, financial influence, and having an abundance of information, that maybe those things shouldn't go unchecked, and especially in a growing market where you want competition, but if you allow a big conglomerate to come in from the get-go and essentially corner the market from the start, that's not really going to drive innovation or competition for the reasons that Game Logic is mentioning. So I think this is an important analysis to talk about. It's something that Game Logic, again, drives me bonkers that people don't sit back and provide this type of analysis. Because I think if people listen to this, they may have a better understanding of the why. How do they arrive to this decision? And that's fair. Look, and if you don't agree with it afterwards, whatever, fine. But at least you're getting a well thought out analysis and an informed point of view, I might add, given Game Logic's profession. But I'm sorry, go ahead, man. I just wanted to point that out because I feel like that's what you're making are very good points.
Yeah, no, and that's good. And thanks for holding me up because I was going on. And remember, my point when I convey things like this is, as I've said a bajillion times before, so let me say it again. My point of going through all that was not to convince you that I am right and that I know everything and that I just gave you a 100th percentile explanation and there's no need for you to consider any other perspective. My point is to give you a jumping off point, right? A fabric of information for you that, please, by all means, go do your own additional research, go do your own additional reading. I don't think it's the best way to vet it, but go to the other podcasts and raise these points up and ask them questions. However you want to go about it, formulate your own opinion, right? But at least have the perspective of somebody who is not monetizing, is not worried about your super chats, is not worried about my follower numbers on Twitter, right? Yeah. I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but please use it right to your own advantage.
Yeah. Froggy T actually has a great question for you here in the live chat, Logic.
Yeah, I see that. With edge devices becoming more and more performant and latency being mostly unmovable unless servers push closer to the edge, do you think cloud gaming will explode? So maybe not necessarily for those exact technical reasons. I think I personally agree with some of them. There's one or two in there about the latency being unmovable that I'm not absolutely certain about. But I think, I mean, where I come down, where I agree with you is when we talk about edge devices, which in my mind is a one example of that are the handheld cloud gaming devices, right? But also edge devices are also things like, I take a COD server and I move it closer, right, to end users that I'm trying to get to, right? And I have bandwidth and capacity to then synchronize that account information with the mothership, right, back at Xbox Central, so to speak. I do think cloud gaming is going to explode. We've talked about it on the show before. I think there's part of a generation, this goes back to also kind of listening to some of these podcasts, and actually some of them are guests that we've had on this show, and I constantly push back on them. And they say, cloud gaming is not going to take off. Everybody wants everything to run on Metal, on-prem. We want the highest performance, blah, 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 blah. And I remind them about the next generation, right? So, I talk about, for example, my kids, the first time, we were moving, they had to go live out of a hotel for a while. And I came up to visit, while I had already gone forward to where I was going to be working. And they were in the hotel the first night, and one of them needed to use the bathroom. And they said, "Hey, pause the show." Right. And I'm like, and they're watching it on the hotel television. And I'm like, there's no pausing the show. We're not in control of the delivery, right? Like, this is live television, right? You're just going to miss part of the show. Please go to the bathroom. And my point is that the eyes, and that's a good point, Jeeves, explode versus or just gradually and slowly replace consoles as infrastructure sees fit. There's a bit of that, and I'll get to that. But the point is, the eyes that those younger generations see the world through are different than where we came from. And they've
absolutely
come into the game, right, devoid of some of those preconceived notions that we have. And so some of them are gonna be fine with cloud streaming. Some of them don't want to be bothered, right, by acquiring hardware, by all the cables and the wires. And yeah, they get that there are moderately improved experiences, but also understand that even within our own set of demographics, right, there are people who are concerned about, what I refer to as the S-tier experience, right, who everything runs on a wire, everything's 4K resolution, blah, 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 blah. But then there are people who are also fine with 1080p, who play over Wi-Fi. I think BRAP and I were talking about, and you were talking about you were live streaming, and you were one of the people that I always, admonish because they're trying to live stream over Wi-Fi. So, we have stratifications of customers who are fine with different types of experiences, right? And so cloud gaming is going to creep in. It's going to become more and more acceptable. Or there's going to be more and more people to whom it is acceptable who are going to be in the gaming space. And going back to Jeeves' comment, yeah, the difference between explode versus gradually creep, I think it's kind of a mixture of both. I think there is going to be gradual growth, but the way I think about it is that gradual growth often happens while people aren't paying attention to it, and then they wake up one day and suddenly realize that, X percentage of the gaming consumer market is consuming games through cloud, and to them it feels like it exploded because they weren't watching the steady growth over time.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Game Logic. Cycle Gamer with the $5 super chat says, how is Microsoft buying ABK stopping competition? Stadia tried competing and still failed without Microsoft owning ABK. Who's going to be a player if Google couldn't? I think Cycle, I don't know if you missed it, but I think Logic kind of laid out that, that scenario of, with Microsoft coming in and acquiring ABK and having the resources that some of the smaller players don't have to prop up a cloud gaming service that could compete at scale with them. I think he was maybe you missed that, but if you want to go back maybe 2 or 3 minutes, rewind and go back and listen to what Logic said. But he did flesh that out a bit here. And I go ahead, Logic.
And I think this is one of the arguments that people make, and I understand the perspective which it comes from, but I have to convey that I feel it's wrong, and I think it's not how the regulatory agencies think about it. By wrong, I just mean I don't think that's how, like I said, the regulatory. The reasoning is it's not going to get any better. So how is allowing it to become marginally worse a bad thing? That's just not an argument that I think holds water with anybody enforcing regulations. I think the fact that it's incredibly difficult to get into the gaming space, and basically no one's done it. We mentioned a few shows ago, no one's made a new console platform and entered the space since Microsoft did. My feeling is at this point, no one can, other than the big five, because it takes a vast amount of financial resources and it takes a willingness to take loss. And nobody can do that right now but one of the big five. Who's going to be a player if Google couldn't? That I don't know, but that's not a reason to approve a merger, right? I can't say, although we do it all the time here, I can't say, I'm not going to send you to jail for murder because somebody else may commit a murder next week. Therefore, the murder you committed is okay and you get a pass. That's just not how the regulatory agencies enforce these guidelines.
Yeah, that's a great point. I do want to move on to I don't borrow time here, Game Logic. I'm looking at the Moochie's like, hey, are you going to be there on time, BRAP? But no, the reaction by Microsoft was I was surprised. I was actually surprised by Brad Smith's commentary. I wasn't surprised by Lulu. I forget her last name, but Lulu. I wasn't surprised by Lulu's commentary because she's been pretty aggressive in her commentary throughout this whole process. But Brad Smith really kind of took me back a bit because
let's just keep it a buck. He showed his ass.
Yeah, I mean he did, and he actually, in my opinion, the fact that, and I'll read one of the quotes from Brad Smith, the CMA's decision redirects a pragmatic path to address competition concerns and discourage technology innovation and investment in the United Kingdom. Lulu went on to say the CMA's report contradicts the ambitions of the UK to become an attractive country to build technology business. We will work aggressively with Microsoft to reverse this on appeal. The report's conclusions are a disservice to UK citizens who face increasingly dire economic prospects. You can actually relate to how the UK citizens feel about this, Lulu. We will reassess our growth plans for the UK. Global innovators, large and small, will take note that despite all this rhetoric, the UK is clearly closed for business. It is not closed for business. That's ridiculous commentary. But Brad Smith even, mentioning some of the support that Microsoft provides the UK government from cybersecurity, and talking about maybe having to reevaluate how they do business or their desires to do business in the UK, which, look, Hamp, to me, I'm reading this, I'm like, Brad, you are almost in some ways, in my opinion, at least I think that he's actually proving the CMA right in some way, that here's big Microsoft, and we're going to show you, because we're Microsoft, we have trillions of dollars, and we have all this. Remember, hey, UK, we provide you cybersecurity. You sure you want to mess with us? It's a very mob boss reply.
Yeah, it was very funny. It was very funny that a GameIndustry.biz editorial came out today that cited that exact analogy, which you and I have used many times before. And in fact, that person actually did the same thing I've done, which is, do the mob boss voice. And my reference is usually to, you're going to need sanitation protection. So a sanitation service, and they made that reference in that article as well.
Yeah. And Brad Smith goes, if the government of the United Kingdom wants to bring in investment, if it wants to create jobs, and if it wants to make the United Kingdom a home where technology is not only going to flourish, but be creative, that needs to look hard at the role of the CMA. So now he's saying, hey, you know what? UK government, you need to do something about this CMA because we want this deal to go through.
Right, which dovetails with the same thing that they and other corporations who've been trying to get mergers through have been saying, saber rattling in the U.S. about the FTC, that its very organization and existence is unconstitutional. So.
Yeah, and he says that he's suggesting that the legislators strip the regulatory body of its independence. So here's an American corporation who wields tremendous amount of power because they are providing these key infrastructure services to not to the United States, but to the United Kingdom. And he's kind of proving their point. He's kind of proving the concern that the regulatory agencies have about these big tech companies who wield tremendous amount of influence, who have tremendous amount of control of infrastructure, and not just the U.S., but in other countries. They prop up business. They prop up governments. It's funny, man. Like, I used to make fun of the what is it? The Wayland, I always forget. What is it? The
Weyland-Yutani Corporation.
Weyland-Yutani Corporation from Aliens. I used to think it was the most ridiculous thing watching the movies. Oh, that's funny. A corporation kind of acting as a government body? Never happened. But here we are. And Microsoft and Brad Smith are making asking the UK government to intervene on their behalf, or else. He goes on to say Microsoft has been in the United Kingdom for 40 years, and we play a vital role, not just supporting your business and nonprofits, but even defending the nation from cybersecurity threats. Look, Hamp, I'm reading this. I'm like, Brad Smith is flexing right now. He's flexing. But he is showing, in my opinion, he is showing the concerns that the regulatory bodies have about these big tech companies and the amount of power they wield. I mean, think about what he sounds like Hamp, it's funny, man. We joke about the sanitation thing, the mob boss thing. He sounds like a mob boss. We play a vital role. I'm going to read this again. Not just because I was blown away by this. Not just supporting business and nonprofits, but even defending the nation from cybersecurity threats. But this decision, I have to say, is probably the darkest day in our 4 decades in Britain. It does more than shake our confidence in the future of the opportunity to grow technology business in Britain than we've ever confronted before. Now, granted, he's not saying that they're not going to work. They're going to that they're going to stop working with the UK, but he's not confirming that they won't either.
Yeah, so Josh has some good mentions in Josh Ayers. He says he's never been told no in his life. Clearly, and my problem, Josh, actually is I actually have previously, as I've kind of reported and followed Microsoft, over the last 20 years, I've actually previously had a very high opinion of Brad Smith. I often mention, you need to, when he does a blog post, you need to read that and pay attention to it. Because that is what Microsoft does to signal things to Capitol Hill and to regulators on their feelings on and how they're going to, protect competition, et cetera. And this, as I mentioned, when he made his quote, which Microsoft backed off of earlier when they went their rounds with the FTC, and he used the term, "we tried peace." And he kind of let the comment trail off after that, which obviously the implied opposite of that is, and now we're going to try war. And I said, I don't really think that's what you want to do. I don't think you want to do the saber rattling with the government regulatory agency. Josh then says, do you think the Commonwealth will now turn around and shut them down? And I don't know. I won't comment on, how kind of I expect things to work within the Commonwealth, because I'm not a Commonwealth citizen. But I will say, from working with the U.S. government, and I've mentioned this on the show before, what you have to be aware of in the dynamic. The U.S. government can have an employee or an agency that you, as a corporation or a contractor, have a very low opinion of. Can't get out of their own way, doesn't get things done on time. You're constantly asking them for stuff. You can have whatever opinion of them you want. What's unadvisable for you to do as a corporation is to be public, and you can have government sympathizers, right, that agree with you. Let me just pull one out of the hat. DHS owns 23 subordinate agencies. Let's say you have a low opinion of the TSA, right, with something you're trying to get through, and somebody at DHS agrees with you. But what you can't do is you cannot be overt and public about your criticism of that other government agency, because what that will do is lots of these agencies feel like, we have our redheaded stepchildren, but there are redheaded stepchildren, and we're not gonna side with industry and with civilian corporations who throw rocks at one of our compatriots, because at the end of the day, we have our bad actors, but we're all a team, right, within the government. And so, in my opinion, what Brad Smith, what Lulu, what Kodak have done is they've been very public about their criticisms of the CMA. And what's worrisome is that dynamic may cause, various actors and various members within the UK to close ranks, right, around the CMA. The EU, the EC was looking on at that tirade. And you may think, all the comments about, the EU is so much more sensible, and you may think that may play well. But what it may say is, these mofos think that they're going to tell sovereign nations that they have better judgment than we do about what our own citizens need.
Game logic, that was kind of my thought process. Like, Brad Smith is telling a sovereign nation, how to conduct their business, how they should be looking out for their citizens. A sovereign nation. That's probably not going to sit well. You're not necessarily helping your case, Brad Smith. I don't think he is, at least. I don't think he is. And do we want corporations having that kind of power, that kind of influence to be able to reverse decisions or have influence of regulatory agencies that are in place to protect competition, in place to protect consumers? Is that what we want?
And I said the same.
That's kind of scary. Again, I go back to Aliens, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. I mean, God, Hollywood. Yeah. They may have given us a glimpse into the future.
Right. And I've said the same thing about this weaponizing of congressmen against the Japanese FTC. There's a part of the community, part of the Xbox community, that thinks that that's going to go over well. That claps their hands and says, "Yeah, go get them," right? And understand what those letters say and what those letters are asking. They're asking the U.S. Trade Representative and the Secretary of Commerce to convey to the Japanese FTC that they're not enforcing their own laws and that their backyard is dirty, and to get their act cleaned up, or else. And I'm like, it's amazing to me. Just put yourself in the role of the Japanese FTC and think about how you would receive that. How you would receive another nation coming to you telling you that you're not enforcing your own laws and that you need to clean up your act.
Like
right?
for those, yeah, real quick, Camp. I'm sorry, man. Quick, easy analogy here too. For those of us who are parents, imagine someone across the street coming to your house and telling you how to raise your kids and telling you that you're not raising your kids correctly, and how you should run your household.
It's a really good analogy.
How would you feel? How would you feel? I'm sorry,
right.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So unless that's conveyed like incredibly tactfully and diplomatically, which quite frankly, I don't know. And I studied diplomacy in college and I paid attention to diplomacy right for the last 20, 30 years. And I don't know that there's a good news story to dusting up that topic. So, I don't know how it's going to play, but again, I don't think it's really cause to cheerlead and say, yeah, go get them.
Yeah, that's so weird, man. Go get them. I don't understand it, man. I really don't. All of this over a merger, too. The interesting thing was Lulu's commentary about, Activision and hurting. I got to go back to the quote here. That the report's conclusions are a disservice to UK citizens who face increasingly dire economic prospects, as if Activision and this was great about this the article by GameIndustryBiz today, as if Activision contributes so much to the UK economy. And in this article. I gotta cite the author of this article here. It was written by, God, who was it written by? Here we go. Brendan Sinclair, managing editor, GamesIndustry.biz. And he says, to be fair, Activision Blizzard does employ some people in the UK. Looking at companies' findings in the UK government, King, filing as MidasPlayer.com, employed a monthly average of 363 people during 2021, down from 403 in 2020. Activision Blizzard UK Limited employed another 154, and the company did recently establish a Sledgehammer UK studio that will need staffing up. But then he also says, I don't know if having fewer than 1,000 jobs in UK is worth looking the other way when your regulator determines a deal will have an anti-competitive effect that hurts consumers, though. And then he brings up taxes. Activision Blizzard has been hugely successful in recent years, and big profit margins mean a bigger take for the government. He says that Activision Blizzard's UK Limited reported pre-tax loss for 2021, which meant the company didn't pay taxes, but instead received $5.3 million in tax credits for years. So the reported tax loss reported was $441 million. The Activision Blizzard overall profit 2021 were $564 million. Let's see here. The $1.1 billion, the amount of back taxes. So $1.1 billion is the amount of back taxes and penalties tax authorities in the UK, Sweden, and France were seeking from Activision Blizzard 2019, and this was according to an investigative think tank, Tax Watch UK. The article goes on to say, to hear Activision Blizzard tell it, the UK government is anti-business and anti-tech, and the CMA ruling is the proof. But this ruling is really only against the merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, a merger which doesn't seem to have a lot of upside for the tech business that compete with Microsoft or Activision Blizzard. Besides, it was just last month the UK government announced it was upgrading the UK game development tax break from 25% to 34%, which actually gets it in the neighborhood of Quebec's 37.5% tax credit for labor costs. So I thought those were some interesting stats that he pulled up there in this article. I'm going to drop a link to this article, by the way, because I do think it's worth a read here.
Yeah, it's a great article, and we unfortunately, as things look like they're shifting hands at GameIndustry.biz. We used to hear from Brendan Sinclair in articles as frequently. I think there's some passing of the baton, but going to Christopher Dring now. We hear from him much more often, but I mean, Brendan Sinclair is a amazing journalist, and I've called out some other journalists on this show that a lot of people pay a lot of attention to that I think are shams at best. You should really read GameIndustry.biz, and you should definitely pay attention to anything that Brendan Sinclair personally posts directly.
Yeah, no, it was a really great article, and it was kind of interesting because Lulu's commentary. I'm like, Lulu, like your company really doesn't contribute much to the UK economy, based on those numbers.
Yeah, actually owes them money.
yeah, and you owe them money in back taxes, and you're out here, and then You know what's insulting to me about her commentary is that she doesn't live in the UK. She doesn't understand or can really understand the perspective of what the citizens of the UK are feeling in terms of the economic downturn there and the impact of inflation in that country, or the impact of Brexit that's to the UK. But here she is making this commentary, and she's got to be aware that ABK doesn't have much economic impact, positively speaking, to the UK or the people that live there. It's not like they're this big job provider there.
It's a little embarrassing. She tried the tact. It seems like she tried the tact of somebody who owes people money, and but tries to get out of it by yelling at the bill collector.
Oh man! But I got to be honest with you. I did think Game Logic that a lot of the conspiracy theories and these false narratives would stop, and it's I really. The disappointing thing about some of and I mentioned one content creator that skews very heavy Xbox, making these accusations of Lena Khan operating outside the law, which is totally ridiculous because, again, you need to think about who she reports to, which is the President of the United States, who appointed her, which is the President of the United States, that she went through the vetting process, was approved by had to go through the approval process through Congress. So you're saying that the entire United States government is complicit in illegal behavior. And that Lulu is just running around unchecked, she doesn't speak to Joe Biden, she never speaks to President Biden.
Yeah, go ahead. I missed what you said. You didn't slip and call Lena Lulu, did you?
I may have called her Lulu.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just want to ratchet. We're definitely referring to Lena Khan,
But again, this is a narrative that started out of that camp, where they took bits and pieces from people who are legal experts, and they don't understand how to parse some of the legalese, if you will, because they're not legal experts themselves, and ran with these false narratives, and it's still going on. It's really unfortunate. And it's a disservice to people. I feel like if you're a podcaster, we don't this way. We don't spread disinformation here. That's not what we do. We're not trying to purposely mislead people. We're not trying to monetize off people feeling disenfranchised, as weird as that is, about the console of their choice, or monetize off of people's emotion about this deal. And I'm telling you, I thought that stuff would stop, and it's just and they're just doubling down. It's really unfortunate. Game Logic, we've been talking for quite some time now. You by now probably know that one of my biggest pet peeves is disinformation.
It is for both of us. Yep.
Because I've seen what disinformation can do, and how divisive it can be, and how harmful it can be. I mean, we have evidence of that throughout the history of the U.S. and more recently. This is supposed to be a hobby. This is supposed to be a form of entertainment that we enjoy, and then you have people out here spreading disinformation. Why? You have people out here, now Bobby Kotick, because he suggested that the FTC and the CMA were colluding together and doing something illegal. Now people are championing Bobby Kotick, mind you, the head of Activision, who threatened to kill one of his assistants, who completely swept sexual harassment under the rug and the mistreatment of employees. That's the guy you want to champion now? Got to do better. Got to do better.
Yeah. So one thing I want to mention before we go, because I know you got to run. So just going back to what I mentioned earlier about kind of painting the picture of how it's a different world. Governments and regulatory agencies are looking at things through a new lens. One of the things that I think has to happen in order to interpret and see what's going on. I don't think it's an entirely misshapen perspective to have that, hey, the FTC is operating in a way that's different than we're accustomed to. The arguments that, well, this deal should go through because in the past they have. I think one thing that needs to be understood and considered is, as I constantly mention, people do these rigid interpretations of laws, and like I said, base that this deal should go through because things have in the past. In this country, we allow laws to be interpreted. That's why things change. I don't point to it as a good example, but Roe versus Wade was overturned because in this country we allow laws to be interpreted and reinterpreted and assessed whether or not we've got it right. Again, I'm not pointing to that as a positive example, but I am saying that there are times that we revisit how we are running the country, how we are therefore regulating commerce. I don't think you should automatically leap to the assumption that reinterpretation is bad, given the things that I outlined, that we are in a new normal. This is not the same. The immense amount of power that Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, and Microsoft wield is not the same as the influence that Exxon wielded, that Bank of America wielded. It is starkly different. And it is absolutely necessary that be taken into consideration, at least in whether or not we are doing things right and whether or not we have got it right. And if you do not allow for that latitude to happen, then you're talking about a human race and a world and a country that are evolving and never allowed to revisit how we're running the country and how commerce is being regulated. And that just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And even I was caught off initially when they announced they were going to block this deal because there had been some historic precedent. But then as I was thinking about what's happening, I was thinking about the power that these big tech companies wield, and Microsoft proving the CMA's point more or less with, Brad Smith's commentary of, we do all these things for them. But it made me think, and you and I talked about this. I said, geez, people don't realize that throughout our country's history, we've always reevaluated our laws. We've always reevaluated, regulation, how we regulate different industries. We've always done that. And this is that point now where we're looking at big tech and we're asking those questions. I say we. Our governments are asking those questions of, wait a minute, are these companies getting too big for their britches? Do they wield too much influence? Are they hurting potential new competitors from entering the market? I don't think those are unreasonable questions. I don't think that's an unreasonable conversation to have when you think about the potential impact it can have when you consolidate corporations and they own so many of the things that we use daily in our lives. And what that means to us as consumers to have that kind of power over us, over what we consume, over what we pay. Like Logic, you said, I'm holding my cell phone right now, man. I mean, what you just said earlier in the show about the cell phone and how much power's there in that device. Like, and how much information they have of ours that's there, and how we buy things on the phone and how we interact with people.
Yeah, I mean, and I stopped short of drawing that spider web out, right? I mean, that's just our smartphone. Then you think about all this, people who wear smartwatches, and I mean, it just goes. I mean, and we have a connectivity to social media, but even as much as our connectivity is, you have people in it who are even deeper. I mean, we're on here talking about games, but there are some people living their lives through social media.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
You talk about Instagram and the impact of
and TikTok.
Youth in TikTok. I mean, it's just, man, it's a thing.
Yeah, and I don't think it's unreasonable to have those conversations, and I do think, and I would really encourage people to read, regulatory concerns about big tech, because I do think, Logic, that this isn't just about gaming. This decision by the CMA, it's bigger than gaming. It's about, wait a minute, the big tech isn't just going to because they have huge market share, market cap, and they have trillions of dollars, billions of dollars of cash at hand, that they could just take their cash and just walk into any industry, any consumer product, and just buy their way in and just dominate. And eliminate competition through that, because they can. I don't think those are unreasonable concerns or things that shouldn't be discussed, in my opinion. Because like you've said this, Logic, like a consolidation of power, a consolidation of the supply chain. What does that mean to us as consumers?
Right? Is that Mooch buzzing you on your phone?
No, it's not. No, it's not. No.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's probably. Yeah, Josh Air says exactly. BRAP, is it right to buy a large portion of a market share just because? I don't think that's an unreasonable question to ask. But you talked about this, Game Logic, on this show. The consolidation of supply chain, what does that mean for consumers, ultimately? Less choice, right?
Yep.
Just food for thought, that's all. Well, that's the rant this evening, Game Logic. I do want to get the super chat from Black Metal Gamer, $2 super chat. Thank you. Says IQ test needs to be required to own smartphones. I tell you, if you've ever seen the movie Idiocracy, I encourage you to watch it, because I do feel like we're heading down that path, and it's scary. But so look, I'm going to actually jump on Mooch's show right now, Crossfire. It's getting ready to start here in like a minute. And so I'm going to jump on that show, and let me drop the link here in the live chat. So if you want to come over and hang out with me and the panel there, come join us. It's going to be a really great conversation tonight. We'll be talking about the CMA blocking this deal, and there's some other topics there. So he's got a stacked panel tonight. So definitely, we got Falky. Falky's going to be there, Game Logic, and Falky had some great points, some interesting commentary regarding this deal on Wednesday night's BRAP. So, but Logic, hey, always a pleasure, man. Appreciate your time. If you want to be found, let everyone know they can find you.
This is going to be a bit controversial, BRAP, but I will actually be on the Gaming Circle podcast tomorrow, so that would be one place that people can come look for me and check it out.
Oh, cool. Okay. The Gaming Circle. Who hosts that?
That's TKO Asante and Everborn.
Oh, okay. That should be a fun show, man.
Yeah, and if I don't pronounce your name correctly, Johannes Wetzler, there will be no Windows Phone slander in this chat. Okay, just want to put you on notice.
Oh my goodness! All right, yeah. Well, if I can, I'll definitely come and check out the Gaming Circle podcast. That should be a good show. And what time's that show go live?
I think that's at 10 a.m. Tomorrow morning, Eastern time. Eastern Daylight Time.
I probably won't be able to make the 10 a.m. time. I'll have to catch the replay. So, but
should be very interesting. A lot of the interesting personalities that we interact with will be there. Also, a good friend of the show, OMB, will be on there. OBM,
okay.
Sorry.
OBM. One Bad Mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
OBM's a really good guy. Solid. He's a solid guy. Yeah. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Look. Have fun playing video games. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. Regardless of whatever platform you're on, as long as you enjoy it, whether it's Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, hopefully it's PC because that's the best place to play video games, just have fun. That's all that matters. If you're happy with your platform, that's all that matters. Anyone who tells you otherwise, tell them to go kick rocks. And we're out. Come join us on Crossfire. Crossfire.
All right, man. Have a good one.